Hello students, welcome to this e-lecture on the third key question of learning about global tourism. What is the cost of developing tourism? In these past weeks, as we have learned about tourism, I'm sure you have realized that there are many impacts and these impacts need to be managed. So before we learn about what are some things that have been done to control the impacts of tourism, let's learn concretely what are the impacts of tourism. To have a better understanding of them, we generally categorize these impacts into economic, to do with money, social cultural, to do with people, and environmental, to do with the environment, of course. So as we move along each of this, you'll see that these benefits and disadvantages sometimes may overlap, but that's life. It's a bit messy. But we do have a way of categorizing them, and the first way that we categorize impacts generally is economic. So tourism can actually bring about many positive and negative economic impacts. They help you to earn more money, they also cause other negative impacts. So let's look at them. Generally, the four main positive impacts are employment opportunities, growth in income, increase in foreign exchange, and infrastructure development. And the general negative impacts are seasonal employment, underuse of facilities, and shortage of services. What is employment opportunities? First of all, we must understand that tourism brings in tourism receipts, which is money. And when there is money, there will be work. Tourists bring in money, they want to pay for things, and they pay for services and goods. So this brings about employment, which is work that's performed for a wage or salary. It can be in cash or it can be in kind, where they give you housing. So this growth of tourism has led to an increase in tourism-related jobs, be it directly in the tourism industry, be it in hotels, souvenir shops, and indirectly as well, taxi drivers and general shop owners, shopping centers, they all benefit. And in 2011, the tourism industry actually employed 6 to 8% of all working jobs in the world. That's actually quite a big sum. Now, this employment opportunities naturally bring about growth in income. When there are more people traveling, there will be greater number of tourist receipts. And tourism receipts are money received from tourism spending that will lead to an income growth for individuals, companies, and countries. Generally, tourism receipts roll to create generally large revenues for many countries. So in 2011, this actually exceeded $1 trillion. This is generally because when tour companies hire locals to help, and these locals earn money on top of their basic income, this effect trickles down to the rest of the economy. Locals earn more, they spend more on other parts of the economy, and they will also have to pay more taxes. Companies earn more, they have to pay more taxes. So as a result, the entire government earns more money, the entire country earns more money, and there is a general growth in their income. But this also has its problems because there are these things called leakages. When a lot of the money that you earn comes from international investments, these can be lost. So these are actually paid to other countries for the import of goods and services that tourists demand for. For example, in Phuket, there are many travelers, but some of these travelers don't necessarily use local-owned businesses. Instead, they use the services of foreign-owned businesses and buy imported items. For example, many souvenirs are actually made in China. But some of these profits made by local businesses are sent to other countries. So let's take a look at a visualization of how serious this is. In Phuket, when people spend $1, 70% of it goes to the global economy. 24 cents goes to the economy in Thailand itself, and only 6% goes to the locals, be it the people who own their hotels, local transport, and local tours. That's because many of the businesses that are run in Phuket are actually global. McDonald's, Intercontinental Hotel. So a lot of this money actually leaks out to the rest of the world. So growth in income can sometimes be very small for the locals. But in general, there is some growth in income. And this is because there is an increase in foreign exchange. When people come to your country and they exchange their money with yours, it gives you money to buy countries from elsewhere in the world. If tourists come to Singapore, they give us USD to change for our currency, so we give them Singapore dollars. We can use that USD to buy goods from other countries, or the Great Britain pound to buy goods. This also makes the Singapore dollar more in demand, which leads to an increase in value. So this is a look at how it happens. Generally, when international hotel chains come, they invest in our facilities and they help our tourism-related businesses grow. This will pump money into our other businesses, and which will add money to our government, and our government will distribute that money to the rest of Singapore. And when the tourists come, they also inject their money into our economy, and that helps us to increase our amount of foreign exchanges and grow our reserves, which helps Singapore to become a richer country and to pay for the infrastructure that we need. Now, infrastructure refers to the basic structures and facilities needed for an operation of a society. If a government didn't have money, we wouldn't have so many roads, so many transport networks, so many communications and utilities. So, and without these, tourism cannot develop. If you have a country where you don't have roads, how can people travel to other beautiful places? So tourism cannot develop and would not be able to operate on a large scale that would benefit the country if there isn't enough for infrastructure and facilities such as airports, roads, electricity, and hotels. All of these things are needed for a country to grow and also for tourism to happen. So sometimes this actually enhances, things that are built for tourism benefits the locals. Previously, if I wanted to visit a beautiful place, there may not have been a road. So the government builds a road to link the airports to these sites. And this allows tourists to access local attractions, but it also gives the local people better access to the things that are in the city, the markets, healthcare, and it creates employment for them because you're going to hire them to build the roads. And the local industries are boosted because the local materials are used and they earn money for it. And this generally brings about economic growth because of the greater spending. Now, all these are very, very good, but there are negative impacts. What happens is that some places, they have climatic variations. I have winter, then I have summer, and some activities are tied to climate. So places like the Alps in Europe, where the ski season is very, very full, but once it's summer, they lose their jobs. So you can see sometimes centers, they are very busy during Christmas, but this causes unemployment during the lull period in between. And these people have to find other sources of income, or they may just become jobless, and this has a very negative impact on the economy in general. Another thing that can also happen is the underuse of facilities. When you build certain things just for tourism and they are no longer used, this can become very neglected and they become an eyesore in the society, and they could even become places that have negative impact on the society. So generally, Beijing Olympics was just less than 10 years ago, yet many of these venues, like this beach volleyball venue, are already gone. They are deteriorated beyond recognition, and only one of them has been renovated to become more profitable, where the water cube was renovated into a water park. And only a third of their major sports venues have managed to break even. And this is very serious because you pump in a lot of money and you burn it on these places. And in the end, the people who lose out are the people, the locals. The last negative impact on the economy is the shortage of services. Generally, tourist infrastructure requires space. If I need a wider road, I may encroach into someone's house. And this also requires land, water, and power. And the more tourists use, the less there may be for locals, and tourists can pay more. So this generally can disbenefit locals when especially the locals are not developed. The local area is not developed enough. Now, there are also social cultural impacts of tourism, generally on their local customs. This is a double-edged sword. When tourism comes, it can lead to the preservation of culture. So cultures that are deemed to be good, that are deemed to be special, can be protected. This includes their economic activities, traditional beliefs, and religious practices, where we restore certain houses and their heritage and their customs because we think that, oh, that's very beautiful. Okay, and this increase in tourism receipts can be used to maintain certain sites. For example, the Christ Church in Malacca, the Angkor Wat. Okay, all these places, tourist dollars actually helps maintain them. However, the opposite could also happen when many tourist dollars comes and the economy decides that, hey, we can adjust and we can make it more attractive for tourists. This can lead to the loss of authenticity of their own culture. So this identity, culture, and values can be diluted and lost when commercial activities take over. So this is actually a picture I took in a very beautiful place in Shanghai called Yuyuan, and there we have one big Starbucks. The buildings are modified. They're still very beautiful and traditional, but it's Starbucks Chinese. And as a result of all these movements, the locals may also relocate elsewhere, which changes the original atmosphere and the functions of that place. Yuyuan was an imperial garden, and yet has become a place where tourists go for Starbucks. So this loss of authenticity due to the repurposing of meaningful traditions into money-making vehicles can really cause the loss of many cultures and customs, where they are adjusted just so that tourists can see them, just so that tourists can take pictures of them and enjoy them. This actually causes a loss in the significance of these cultural events. So the kind Lawi people used to wear their neck rings as a symbol of their cultural beliefs, but now they become exhibits and it demeans their culture. The third social impact of tourism is that crime generally could also increase due to the luring effect of the many valuable items being flashed around. In a less developed country where people may not have been given so many luxuries, these can cause greater muggings, cheating, and scamming. So this also caused the rise of tourist traps where things are sold at greatly inflated prices to cheat tourists, and all of these later on can deter tourists from visiting. I really don't like visiting certain places because I know that there will be touts. And many countries have police to help, but it's still a serious issue. In Chinese tourist train stations, you have many touts just waiting for you. And of course, that doesn't just happen in China. This is in Europe, in UK, where we're just walking along, these people appeared and they were like, oh, let's take a picture. And we thought, hey, who are these friendly people? Okay, take pictures, fine. And we snapped a few shots, and then afterwards, immediately they asked us for £20, which is 40 Sing dollars for 2 pictures. Would you pay that amount? We paid a tiny amount and we quickly left, but this is the kind of, not exactly crime, but things that may create unpleasant impacts on tourists. So moving away from society, we go back to what actually brought about tourism, the visiting of environmental sites. And the problem with tourism is that it brings about largely negative impacts on the environment. Starting base with the only one really positive one is conservation. The fundings that are brought in by the tourism receipts really help to protect and conserve many environments because of the greater awareness of all these sites. And one example is this orangutan rehabilitation center, where the money becomes a way to raise the animals and maintain the reserve lands for them. However, environmentally, there may also be increased congestion because of the large numbers of tourists near these popular attractions. If you go to the 12 Apostles, you can't really see them because there's just so many people taking pictures of them. And again, this is Yuyuan. The bridge is so crowded that you can't even get to the attractions anymore. And this generally can lead to a deterioration of the sites because there's greater erosion. When people keep walking, they actually damage the site quite a bit. Vandalism is where the properties are damaged very, very deliberately. So you can see that this is the Great Wall of China, where they have many words written, an unfortunate incident in Egypt as well, where certain hieroglyphs were defaced. One other impact on the environment is pollution and littering. As you can see, sometimes we are not very responsible in the way we treat our waste. And this is a major problem that degrades many tourist areas. So sometimes authorities don't have strict enough measures that properly manage the waste left behind by tourists. And even on high mountains, that happens. And this leads to a destruction of habitats because of the great number of waste. And the overwhelming amount of litter and number of just people can really damage the sites. And when the tourists visit this in too big numbers, they can destroy the habitats, they can scare wildlife, and sometimes they are just irresponsible enough to kill the corals just by standing on them without caring for them. Largely, the environmental impact is increased carbon footprint, where we just burn so many fuels getting to where we want to be. So this brings us to the end of the impacts lesson about managing in the next video.